Hey Blockheads, we've got a Patreon now. We would really appreciate your support to help us keep this podcast going. There's a link in the description below, so check it out. Now on to the episode. Hey, welcome to Create a Block. We're your host, Gene.
And V, we interview people in the animation industry about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We asked people on Twitter if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
And today with us, we have Jessie Juwono. Hey!
Hi.
How's it going, Jessie?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
It's our pleasure. You, just to give a brief intro, you are a writer, you are an artist, you are a very nice person. That is on your resume, I'm sure.
I should add it.
You should. And you also work in talent development at Cartoon Network, which is that's something that's unique for us. We haven't had anybody that works in recruiting or in talent development on the show, and so we'd love to hear about your journey, kind of juggling the two, what that's like for you, and how one has informed the other. Has it helped you? Has it hurt you? And whatever you kind of have to say about that stuff.
Sure.
But let's take it back.
Yeah.
Take us back to little Jessie and how you got your start and kind of what got you interested in art and animation and all that.
Oh my gosh. Well, it kind of goes back to I was a 90s and early 2000s kid growing up with like Disney, what is it? The Renaissance years, the 90s years. Yeah. I think that's what they call it. And just completely obsessed with Disney and Nickelodeon and pretty much any sort of animated content that I could get my hands on as a kid. And that was just kind of always very constant. I grew up in Orange County in California. I went to Disneyland a lot as a kid. So it was kind of always around me. And yeah, it just sort of took over myself, and my parents definitely noticed. And I would watch all the like behind the scenes footage on like every DVD that or VHS at that point. Drawing.
I love that you were like watching the behind the stuff on the behind the scene on the DVDs, because it's like I don't think I ever did that.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
much later in my life I did, but like how old were you when you were like when you started kind of like being interested in that?
I feel like it was sort of like middle school. Sorry, I know you told me not to use the eraser.
Trying to draw and talk is a challenge.
It is.
We've just been doing it forever, so
this podcast is just an excuse to trap people into talking and drawing.
Yeah, it's punishment.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so you were like in middle school. That's so cool. I love that. I love that you were. Yeah. So it was like really cartoons, right? It like you were always kind of like cartoons are cool.
Yeah, even when it was really like starting to not be super cool I had a few friends that were like really into the same shows as me, but it definitely was like, oh, you're still watching this? Okay. And later on, I feel like I saw people online that would be like, we all love these shows. And I'm like, how dare you?
Yeah. How dare?
That's a lie. None of you were watching that. But yeah, I mean, I was really, I feel like it really took off in middle school, and I was also very active online, even in like the early 2000s.
What were your favorite communities online?
Oh my gosh, I don't remember their names, but there were some Nickelodeon ones that were really popular. I actually ran a Jimmy Neutron form.
Oh my god.
Oh, really? Or that's so funny. That's awesome.
I was like 12 and 12, 13. You know, I still have some friends from those days too.
Oh yeah.
and it was really funny just looking back, because I thought it was like a very long part of my life, but I think it was only like 6 months, because the forum that we used started charging, and I was
No
like
way.
not able to convince my parents, like, hey,
Yeah, that's a tough sell.
I know I'm 13.
I'm talking to a bunch of strangers online. Can
You
you
know,
pay for this?
my parents were like techie sort of people. My dad especially was like techie, and so even when I was like 5, they were like, "Yeah, you should talk to people on like AOL," and I was
Oh, that's really cool.
now looking back, I'm like, what were you doing? And they
They
were
trust you.
all, yeah, no, that was the thing. They were actually very right to trust me because I was like the goody two shoeist of
Yeah.
like kids, still am. And so yeah, I would be like looking for online communities at such a young age, which is probably not like super weird anymore, although like
No, I think
don't,
that's the norm. It's
yeah,
all
at the
discords now.
time,
Yeah.
it was,
It's true. It is true that Discord now is like kind of like the new kind
It's
of
the
like
new
the
forum.
rebirth of like
Yeah.
forums because it is
yeah,
because like at the time, yeah, it was like forums were a big thing, but it was so slow. But also it was nice because you had all the different type of communities. Like it wasn't just like social media, like what like internet is right now. But Discord kind of like put the old internet back on the
Yeah,
game.
this
yeah.
is a bit of a tangent, but I find that really interesting because like
Yeah.
it started with the forums. I also ran a forum when I was 12, so I relate to that hard.
Oh my God.
And I think it was like an Envision free forum, which was like it was free. They never charged for it, and it's still up, but it is just like ravaged with viruses and malware. Like I went on there and it was like all spam. But yeah, it's funny how everything funneled into these like 3 social medias, and now everyone's breaking away from it and going into Discords and all these other little like sub communities, and it's just gone full circle back to where it started because people prefer to have these like little safe private spaces.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
it was
It was nice.
yeah, it was nice. Although like really hard to navigate, like I think as a kid, like looking back, like wow, like actually the cool part was that some of the artists from the show
Really?
found us and would like come in and talk
Oh,
to us.
that's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. They're like
Wow.
animators, and like Jimmy Neutron. They were in Texas, so they were so nice and would answer our questions, and all we would be such we were kind of brats. We were like, "What about Jimmy and Cindy?" And you're like looking back, like, "Oh, I see." Like the connection now as an animation professional, being like, "Dang, they were so nice to us, even though we were like, what about our
Yeah.
ship?"
I have to ask, how do you know that it was really them?
Actually, I still like, there's a couple that I'm still like Facebook friends with. They're real
Okay.
people.
Okay. So they
Yeah,
are, yeah.
yeah.
Because like I know there are people who would go on and just impersonate people.
That's true. I don't remember how we like determined it, except that they all wrote nicer than us like 13 year
That is a good
olds.
sign. That is a good sign. It's
They
like you can
they're
tell when somebody's an adult. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were. I don't know if they showed us like a picture of something. That's a good
Yeah.
question. I don't know if we like
I'm
super
sure you figured it
challenged
out in the
it.
moment, but I find
Yeah.
that I know. So like when I used to Nintendo used to do this like yearly camp thing. I forget what it was called. You might remember. I don't remember. Fuck, what was the name? But like yeah, they would do this thing where it was like a virtual camp, and you could sign up, and there would be like giveaways and stuff. And I remember I was in like the chat of this virtual camp, and somebody who said they were Miyamoto showed up and was like, "Hello, I am Shigeru Miyamoto, and I'm here to talk to And we were all like, "Oh!" Like we were
Oh
so
my God.
fucking hyped. And to this day, I'm like, I don't know if that was actually Miyamoto. Like, I don't think that was actually
That's
him.
so funny.
But
Oh my
yeah,
God.
I don't know.
That's so funny.
The internet was small enough then that it was also easier to believe
Yeah.
because it's like, well, yeah, like this person's probably this person.
Yeah, you weren't exposed to all the like, now there's like a lot of like it's pretty common. Like there's like scam, there's like all that kind of stuff. So phishing, so you're like more wary, I guess. But at the time it was more like,
guys, Chris Evans just DM'd me. Clearly it's definitely Captain America.
There was like a trending Twitter topic that was like, that Keanu Reeves DM might not be what you think. And I'm like, what idiot gets a DM from Keanu Reeves and is like, this is definitely Keanu Reeves?
Oh
like,
my gosh.
What? It's like, no, that's a scam, but I don't know what to tell you.
No.
But anyway, so yeah, you were running this forum, this fan forum.
Yeah, and now that's official on the internet forever. Yeah,
I'll own it. Love it.
Yeah, I do. I said it at a WIA mentorship panel I was
okay.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that was probably one of my earlier exposures to like, oh, people like do this as a job. And actually even think it's funny that I used to get really hyped on finding like mistakes in animation and like pointing them out. And the funny thing now looking back, I was like, wow, I was being like a PA in a retake session. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh wow, I was like preparing myself to be a PA, even though my family was probably like, you should probably like get off of the internet.
The computer. Yeah. But I mean, that stuff's fun because it's like, it's almost like these little secrets. You're like, hee.
Yeah, for sure.
They forgot the color of the sin. I
yeah. I mean, it's kind of fun to, I mean, I don't want to be like the person that's like, ooh, they're getting it wrong and everything's terrible on the show. Like, no, it happens. These shows are so expensive and it's so
just like a house of cards and like it's hard enough to keep things running. I don't think we knew that as kids. Now it's more like I'll see it and I'm like, I know what happened here. I don't know. It's like I can like feel what happened in the pipeline.
Like, we ran out of retakes, okay?
Yeah, it's amazing that anything ever looks right. Honestly, like it's a miracle when everything turns out.
It really is.
So yeah. So you were already preparing yourself for life in animation.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to be semi close to LA that like sometimes there would be like signings and my parents would take me. I'd be like the youngest person there, and I got to meet like a few heroes like kind of young, and that was pretty cool. And so I was really determined to go to art school and, like live I'm pretty sure I wanted to be like an animator, like Disney feature at the time. And, at that point it was really, really dying off for 2D animation, at least, from a feature animator side. So I found a local art school that shall not be named, but I went to art school. Was so exciting because it was the first time I was really connecting with people that loved animation too and wanted to be doing the same things. Like, that was so exciting. I had a little bit of it growing up in that, like, since we were so close to Disneyland, generally everyone like at least like liked a little bit of animation. And I would I even remember like I would write like kind of fan fictions about my friends and I going on adventures.
That's so sweet. That's really cute.
Yeah, I would read them during like our lunch breaks, and
that's so cute.
they were so wild, and it was funny looking back at it because I wrote it in script format without
Oh,
really.
wow.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I don't
Like
know why.
You
like a
just
script, like a stage play, kind of like more like theater, or kind of like
Yeah, I
screenwriting.
think I was just very like, oh, I like the dialogue part, and I didn't know how to. I don't know if I
Right.
knew how to like describe the rest of it. So I kind of had like, looking at it, it's a very crude script. Um, so yeah, so I went to art school, and that was a good experience for the first few years, and I managed to get an internship at Cartoon Network.
Oh,
That
nice.
happened, yeah, that happened kind of a little crazy because when I applied, I joke that I saw a friend, like literally it happened in kind of a funny way that I had this extra class at school that was sort of about like preparing portfolio stuff. We were able to talk to people, kind of like an early Zoom class, but the technology did not work at all. So half the time we weren't able to actually talk to the people that we were supposed to like get portfolio advice from. So one day it wasn't working, and our teacher like taught us how to do like a resume, and so my teachers decided to teach us how to that this one random day where like none of the technology was working. They decided to teach us how to do a cover letter and resume and fake apply for like an internship.
oh, okay, that's really
Um,
cool.
and I saw a friend because of that got into Blue Sky, and
Hmm.
Hmm.
may it rest in peace.
R.I.P.
um, and I was like, oh, she can do it. Like, I can totally do that. And I like prepped everything and applied, and I got a interview with one department, and it went like really well. They actually nowadays now I actually helped bring like interns in. It's such a different process, but they actually like had me come to the studio to interview, which is kind of
Hmm.
crazy to think about now because now everything's like Zoom like interviews.
Well, yeah.
Uh, and well, for the most part, but and I had a good interview, and then I ended up not getting it because they decided they were gonna go with someone who was closer to graduating, and
Hmm.
I was like finishing my second, I think it was finishing my sophomore year. And I remember getting the rejection call, and I was like watching Coraline at the movie theaters with my friend, and I was like,
Aw.
oh, this is a bummer. And uh, my friend was like, well, why don't you just ask them if there's anything else? And
Oh.
I was like, okay. And I called and said thank you, and like, hey, if there's any other openings, let me know. And for whatever reason, they were like, yeah, okay, let's
Oh.
interview you on this other show. And it was actually on a show, which was cool because before it was like
Yeah.
just a different department. Um, and when I came in the second time, I interviewed, and I ended up interning on, I don't know if anyone remembers it, but it's called Fire Breather. It was a Cartoon Network, their first like produced in-house CGI movie, and it was directed by Peter Chung.
Oh,
Um,
I don't remember that at all.
yeah, you look it up. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think they wanted it to be more movies, and I think they had some sort of like, I don't know, like legal issues. They weren't able to make more. But yeah, that was my first experience. I got to come in as an intern early on in pre-production on the show, and it was pretty wild to like suddenly be at like have all the dreams and then come into Cartoon Network, and I was like 19. like
So you were
a
still
wee
you were
baby.
still in college.
Yes.
You were a sophomore in college, and so you applied for an internship. I want to like spell this out because I think it's really cool. So you applied for an internship. You didn't get the internship.
Yeah.
But you just asked if you could interview for like an actual job.
No. I asked if there was any other internships.
Internships. Got it. Okay.
That I could get interview for.
That's awesome. Either
Yeah.
way, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know if that
That was
happened.
like a great friend to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that your friend was just like, just ask them. And yeah, that's so
Yeah.
cool. I love that. This is so
I want to like yell that. Like, don't be afraid to ask for things because it's like
Oh
I
yeah.
think
Yeah.
everyone feels like, oh, I'm rejected. I'm done. You know?
Yeah. I mean,
I think yeah, you're really right about that. And I was gonna say, like, sometimes you just don't have the idea, you know? Like, it was just so great that you weren't
Yeah.
afraid of sharing that something didn't work out for you to
Mhm.
a friend, because if you hadn't shared that, your friend wouldn't have been like, well, why don't you like ask? I think that's super great.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild because it really changed like my whole life. And
Sure.
I don't even know how like easy that would happen anymore. It's just
Yeah.
like because nowadays it's like you don't even get a chance to like call them back. It's like but I do think there is something like to learn from it. And even nowadays I'm still always like trying to like push myself to be like, you should just ask for the thing and
Yeah.
let people know you want a thing. And you know, a lot of times it's still gonna be like, oh no,
It doesn't
sorry.
always work.
Mm-mm.
I do feel like sometimes it's like, I would say like the current version of it would be kind of something like, if you have an interview with people and you have their name, just, you know, kind of like follow them on social media. Don't be a creep, but
Yeah.
follow them on social media, and maybe
Asterisk.
they'll,
Don't
you
be
know, maybe they'll follow you back. And, you know, if they follow you back and they see your art, like, I think I would say that would be kind of somewhat like the equivalent of like,
Yeah.
or maybe they're like, oh, that person was really great. Maybe they're actually staffing up on the show and they'll reach out that way, you know, like just showing the interest in
mean,
that way.
As a recruiter, I'm like constantly following people and you know, every recruiter is going to be totally different and
Sure.
have
Yeah.
different takes on it. But, you know, I'm always following people and trying like my best to look out for them. And like, if one thing doesn't work, you know, hopefully it's going to be something else
Yeah, exactly.
down
Yeah.
the line.
Exactly.
It's just trying things, you know, like there's no one clear path. We talk about it a lot on the show, but there's no one clear path. And if you want to succeed, you got to try everything and something will work. One thing
Yeah.
has to work.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, like kind of just that. I feel like that's a lot of my own life is just kind of keep trying to do it.
That is
Yeah.
like the
Um,
circle of life. You gotta keep trying and failing, and then it works eventually.
Yeah, I'm like Lion King
Yeah,
was very influential. So yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, nobody is destined for anything. You got to earn that shit.
Mhm.
But unless you're born the king of the lions, I don't know. But the lesson there is murky to me. Yeah. So yeah, you landed at this internship at Country Network, and kind of where did that take you from there?
I went back to school after that and definitely felt like this crazy drive to be back in animation. Like once you get a taste of like,
Oh yeah.
oh my God, this is what it could be and what like life can be outside of like the whole school system. It was just immediately like, oh, I want to go back to that. So I was very like, you know, motivated to
Mm-hmm.
keep going, trying to get more internships. And the summer after that, I ended up getting a DreamWorks internship over at the feature. That was really cool. I was part of the artistic, what was it? It was like called show development.
And so you had
So
two
Yeah,
internships while
that's
you were in school.
I actually had, I'm not even done yet,
oh
actually.
Oh my
wow.
God.
I
Okay.
know, I know. Actually, like to a point where my not super nice professors were like mad at me about
Oh
it.
fuck.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
What? Like what? Is it because
You
like you
know,
were spending too much time outside of school? Like that's kind of
I think
interesting.
a little bit of it, and I think it was a little like share the wealth with everyone else. And I was like, no, I
Fuck
know,
off.
like I need to build connections. I like knew that very early on, and yeah, so I was it's pretty crazy. I interviewed for show development, which was kind of it was like part of the Dreamworks library area. They had a library, so there was people that would like request like DVDs or books for research purposes, and we would like help get that for them, and we would also do research for some of the movies, and we would what else? We would I would scan a lot of like art. I got to scan some like original Prince of Egypt paintings, and
Oh,
that
cool.
was really cool and terrifying because I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna like
Don't drop it. Don't drop
don't
it.
drop it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like as both like a Jewish person and an art lover, I was like animation god, a
This
Jewish
is so
god,
cool.
don't strike me down.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Um, so it was really cool. The crazy thing about it was that is they told us like, okay, it's down to you and this one other person, um, and we're gonna see if we can try and get two interns. And I ended up and they ended up taking both of us, and that second person ended up being Jackie Wong, who ended up years later being my boss
Oh wow.
for 4 years at Cartoon Network. So that was so cool. We kind of I felt like we always started off sort of like a little bit competitive towards each other, like, oh, I would do something really cool that and good that my bosses approved of, and then Jackie would come in and do something like way amazing, and I was like, I gotta keep going, and we ended up becoming really good friends. It like along the side,
Friendly rivals. Yeah. It's like
yeah,
become good friends.
become
That's cool.
coworkers.
So that's a
And
Goku and Vegeta dynamic right there.
yeah, that wound up being on like a side. Like I briefly was, she had started a program called Motivarty. I don't know if you guys remember that program, but it was basically like it started off as classes and then it turned into like a mentorship program where we had all these like animation pros that would select an artist to mentor for like 10 weeks. And
Okay.
Jackie had started that up, and I was super supportive of it because I thought it was such a great idea. And then like she brought me on as kind of like a director of communications, which was basically like I wrote blogs and helped promote it and helped go through the uh, like applications and everything. And then when we decided to wrap up Motivarty, that ended up leading
Mm.
into her going to Cartoon Network as like their head recruiter. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit on
That's all
my
right.
like life story, but yeah, it's pretty. So that coming back to say, like I always tell people, especially if you are lucky enough to become an intern at any of these studios, like hold on to those relationships
Yeah.
because you like you know when you have people that are at the same level as you get to support each other and pull each other up, you know, when things are hard and when things are good. So, yeah, that was pretty cool. That was a really great experience, and I wanted to intern on one of the features. So, yeah, I ended up interviewing
Ooh.
and getting an internship for the fall uh, on Rise of the Guardians, which was super, super cool. And that was an amazing experience. I got to like work with Peter Ramsey and
Hmm.
kind of in their art department. And at that point, I started having some struggles with school because the summer internship had been kind of like 40 hours a week, completely dedicated to, working full time at the
Yeah.
studio. And then I went to splitting it, driving from Orange County to LA like several times
Wow.
a week.
Yeah. That's a
Jeez.
lot. That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and I ended up having this big falling out with my professors, and decided to leave the school after that semester, and
Hmm.
that did not come lightly. It was really, really hard, tough time for me. A lot of people didn't necessarily
Oh
understand
yeah.
everything that happened, so I kind of lost like almost all of my
Mm,
friends at that
yeah.
point.
Oof.
Um, and I but I felt like, okay, I've had all these internships. I've started to build these connections. I feel like I have the ability to at least come in as a production person. I knew I didn't have like the chops to be hired as an artist, because I could at least kind of like make that connection with my work to what was being like what I saw people doing. Um, but I figured like, okay, I can at least try to come back in um, for production. And it was a very difficult time because there were people that wanted to hire me, like Dreamworks. There were some people that wanted to bring me back, but there was like, this was the time that I think Megamind hadn't done super well, so they
Hmm.
kind of had, I don't know if they had layoffs at that point, but they pretty much had to freeze on hiring anyone from outside the studio.
That's so sad.
So I,
Megamind is like so
yeah,
underrated. I love that movie.
I know. I love Megamind. I used to have a giant standee that I had taken from the studio. Oh, it was great. His neck broke though. Like he like tried to like fix it, but yeah, his head flopped over. It's very sad.
Rest in peace. Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I was really sad about that because I really loved that movie. But yeah, so I worked at Disneyland for a little while. Uh, funny story. I actually had like interviewed for Disneyland, and then the next day I was interviewing for Disney TV animation, like a secretary role. And I was like, oh man, like they're back to back, and I was like, what do I do? And I got the Disneyland job, and I didn't get the Disney TVA job, so I was like, all right, like that's fine. I've always wanted to work at Disneyland, and this will at least bring in some money until I can kind of figure out like what what to do next. And I so I worked at Disneyland for like a few months, and it was really great for me because I was able to kind of just uh, come back to like figuring out who I was and meeting new people that didn't have this like association with the drama I had just left. And so that wound up being like this really nice experience. And then a few months in, the Disney TV animation people contacted me again and were like, "Hey, the person we actually hired for that spot like got promoted into something else, and we thought of you, so you want to come back and uh, interview again."
Wee!
So I did, and I got hired.
Hell yeah.
And so I didn't have like I had literally been like maybe I should go back to school, and then I got hired and was like, nope, not that. um, so I was very lucky, and that was about 10 years ago. um,
Wow.
yeah, and so from there I was like such a long way to get back to there, but from there I was on Mickey Mouse Clubhouse and Minnie's Bowtunes for a couple years. I ended up going to after that I went to DreamWorks TV. I was on Dino Trucks as a PA. It's where I met my husband, Ben. And after that, I went to WB as in, like, I call it APM, kind of a coordinator level. And throughout that, I was still like struggling with, like, I want to jump to the artist side, but it just was not working out. I was like talking to a lot of people, and I was trying to test, and I was trying to put a portfolio together. And I did actually eventually get to board and write on an episode of Mighty Magiswords, and which I always proudly say got me I got a Mean Girls reference into a Cartoon Network show.
Nice.
What was the reference?
So, and the main character, like, they're in a cave, and like some mummy dogs come chasing after him, and he gets like a sword that turns into a bone, and he throws it, and they go after it, and he's like, cool, I made fetch happen.
Oh, that's so good.
I'm like,
That's
oh,
so clever.
I can't believe that got through. But
Oh man, 10 out of 10 joke. I really like that.
Thank you. Well, from there, I had a really tough time with storyboarding, and to be fair, I was also during the day doing my production job and trying to board on a really crazy schedule till like 3 a.m. and it was so hard, and I was like really struggling through it. Like, I really kind of got to a point where, like, oh, I don't know if I can really be a board artist. But the thing I at least sort of kept coming away with was, oh, I really like the writing part of this. And so I decided, like, to sort of pivot there and try my hand at like screenwriting. And right, yeah. Yeah, so I kind of like pivoted towards writing. I tried writing some kind of spec scripts, which to those that don't know is like a script based on an existing show to kind of show that you can write in the voice of an existing show. And I tried writing some originals, and I like reached out to people that I super admired, and some of them gave me feedback. Some of them gave me really, really tough feedback, which was good. Caused a little crying, but that's cool.
I think that's always bound to happen, right? I feel like when I was, I don't know, I think I talked about it in my episode, but when I was like showing my portfolio, like kind of at the end of college to some of like the not professors, but like, guests, I guess, like jury or whatever. Like one of them was like, you call those drawings, you call those animal drawings, like just go back to the zoo and draw more. And I was like, oh,
wow.
Yeah, because it was like,
wow.
yeah, like, because it was like supposedly like animal drawings, whatever. So yeah, like sometimes I don't think you can go through an artistic journey without getting at least once like that kind of feedback, right? Like someone that's just like extremely judgmental and like putting you down for whatever reason they have.
Which is funny because now I like have a very different. It really like pushed my philosophies towards like how I approach portfolio reviews.
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad I went through those experiences, but
that's really good. Yeah.
So I struggled, but I met a bunch of people and just really started to be like, hey, like, this is what I want. This is what I want now. It's changed. It was really, really hard to go through that acceptance of like, I didn't want to be a board artist anymore. It was really hard because that first super long time, that was all I was about. And it kind of felt like a little bit of like a betrayal to my younger self. But I think once I started doing like screenwriting, I was significantly happier with like the results of what I was doing compared to when I was trying to storyboard. And I think that was a huge difference for me, is just like like I still love drawing. I can still obviously here still do drawing, but it doesn't have to be like the thing I do completely for a living. But as a result, because I have the experience of drawing, I feel like I have a lot of it's like an extra skill in for myself as a writer, because I feel like when I talk to other writers, they're I'm always writing to figure out how to make something really visual, and I can clearly see it like kind of drawn even in my head. At least for me, it's sort of helps in that respect. And so I appreciate having it, even if it's not something I do, for my, for my day-to-day like job.
Yeah, I think that's like really great that you mentioned that the ability to write visually, because I do think depending on the show, right? But like when you write for cartoons, it's just so much better if you can sneak in. I think Kira kind of talked about that a little bit in her episode, but yeah, like if you can sneak in more like visual slapsticky kind of like gags, that's really taking advantage of the medium, right? Because else it would be just like, else it's more like live action-y type of writing.
Yeah. I love animation so much that I love being able to have like so many of those like the right things for it that make that just really take advantage of like how much you can do in animation, and how charming animation can be, and like how visual it can be rather than just being funny lines. So I wound up getting a little bit of writing experience.
Did you by any chance like read any books or like attend like workshops, or what was kind of like your path into like branching out into writing?
Yeah, I feel like I just kept reading the scripts that from like the shows I was working on. That was a big part of it. Sometimes I was like, I was reading some stuff that I was like, I don't understand what's going on here. And I kind of took a lot of lessons from that, where I'm like, oh, I can't visualize this at all, and kind of trying to learn from like the good and bad of it. I would read scripts that I found like online from, there's like a lot of, around like awards season, a lot of movies and TV shows start like putting their scripts online.
That's good to know. That's an interesting tidbit. Not everyone, people might not know that.
Yeah, I know a lot of the features definitely still do. I don't know if all the TV shows do, and definitely I don't think you can find that much animation. But in general, I would read a lot of that. Or like some very general like Save the Cat stuff is always helpful for me. And a lot of it was like the generosity of friends who would give me notes and were really thoughtful and helpful. I had taken a storyboarding class back at like CDA, and that helped a lot with like story development too. Especially with like when you're trying to write it, even some of it I pull as reference when I'm doing like recruiting work, is just how to keep something kind of simple. I feel like a lot of us as artists always, when we're working on projects for like our portfolio, are always like, all right, I gotta make my epic.
Oh yes.
And anytime I'm even talking to students and then thinking of myself with my own stuff, it's like, all right, how do I pull this back? How do I simplify it? Because I know I can't write a Lord of the Rings epic in like the 30 pages of this sample script. So like, let's pick out like the best stuff of it. Like, let's pick out the most interesting interactions and like boil it down simple and then add to it like with a little more flourish at the end. But it took a while to kind of like figure that out. And even right now, I'm like going through.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's really hard. I agree with that. I'm like currently trying to like write a pilot with a friend, and we have written like 3 versions of the script already because it's like too complicated or like just too simple or this, and then it's like not funny enough, and you're like, all right, just keep
well, that's the thing.
It.
It's like you gotta just keep massaging it and trying to figure it out. But even like, you mentioned Lord of the Rings, but it's like even that started as The Hobbit, which is a pretty simple story, and it's a book. It's not 30 pages, but it's not Lord of the Rings. And then from there it developed into this whole thing. And so like even that example is still valid because it's like you got to start small. Like you got to just do something you can finish and then hope people like it, and then you'll have motivation and incentive to like make it bigger, and it won't be as painful.
Throughout that I wound up getting like a couple of scripts on some DC superhero girls shorts for like it was through WB, and they did them for YouTube, and that came from some like one friend had connected me to the story editor who was like really excited for young talent and able to like recommend people and like all this stuff. So I just kind of kept making some connections through people, and I got those shorts, which was probably my first like straight writing credit. And and that was super exciting, and I got to write for Batgirl and Wonder Woman and Supergirl. I think my biggest joy in that one was the I think Batgirl had some sort of like personality change, and she was really grumpy, and I think we had her like shoot a batarang to get a pizza.
Why not?
Oh, it made me so happy. And so it was like, when you get those opportunities, you're like, oh my God, this is like the best thing ever. Like, let me keep doing this. And, but after that, I had gotten some smaller, little gigs, that hadn't like panned out to too much bigger. So it was like a really long lull, like pretty much like a few years before I started even getting my next opportunity.
Yeah.
That's something I don't know if like a lot of writers talk about, but even the most successful people I know are just like sometimes really struggling to get the next thing, even if they've been on like a super popular show.
Yeah.
Even if they're had been doing really well for a really long time, it's a huge struggle.
Yeah, it happens. I don't think we've heard. I think in general, like people come on the show and they talk about the successes, and like they'll sprinkle in the times that it's been tough. The last one that I think really went hard in on the failures was Jake. And who's also a writer and is but it's like Jake's amazing, but
yes,
and that's the point. That's what's it's like it doesn't really matter how good you are, and that's a tough thing to accept. And I've gone through it. I'm sure Via's gone through it, and it's like it's a tough thing to accept that it kind of doesn't matter unless you're like an once in a lifetime talent, which there are some here and there. A lot of people are just like trying their best, and it doesn't always happen. and you get those long breaks, and like, but then, you know, you got to just ride those out and just like find other ways to like make a living.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't think enough people talk about it, and that's a shame, and I'm glad you're bringing it up.
Yeah, even the people I know who are like those right out of school, like everyone thinks they're genius or they're super successful, like hop straight to board artists. They have their own struggles. They're just different than, you know, what some of us have gone through, where it's like a really long, what is it called in like fan fiction, the slow burn. Someone just have a slow burn.
It's a slow burn. It's slow and steady. Like, that's also fine.
Yeah.
You're also seeing people's highlight reels, you know? Like,
oh,
I think
100%.
Yeah, it's like you're seeing all the best stuff, but you're not paying attention to everybody's life all the time, and God, I hope not.
Yeah.
You don't even pay attention to when things aren't going well for them, and they're probably not public about it, which is they're right. But yeah,
also because you have like, you know, like sayings like fake it till you make it kind of stuff, so there is a culture of like show only when things are going right, and it's like but it's so it makes it easy to forget about that, like the hard times, which is funny because when you watch a movie, you want to see the character going through a really hard time.
You want to see the struggle.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah, it's funny too, because I have always tried to, you know, especially for girls, it is always like a pressure to try and be as confident as possible, or appearing that way. And I always try to kind of be positive on my social media, but kind of as a result, it gets really frustrating when you have friends that are like, oh yeah, but aren't you like doing it? Aren't you doing all the things? And I'm like, no, I need you guys to be aware that I'm looking for work, and you know,
it's
but you
so
don't.
Tough.
It really is.
It's.
No, I was just gonna.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oops. I was just gonna say, like, it does like I relate to what you're saying about like being I don't know, without going too like on too much on a feminist rant, but like as a woman, I feel like you know, you there's like more expectations to just like not complain and just do the job like better, and so there's like less, I don't know, like getting, at least in my experience, I try not to complain or not to talk about when things are tough. And so it does happen when I do open up to like a friend of mine, and they're like, really? I had no idea. And then you're like, all right, yeah, I get it. I get your point of view. I'm not going to be mad at you, but gosh, dang it. Yeah.
Yeah, and people really, you know, they're in their own space, probably also dealing with their own issues, and you know, from that I've sort of learned, like, really you need to let people know, like, hey, by the way, I'm looking, or hey, like, I have a new sample, like, can I share it with you? And you know, I always feel like I'm like apologizing for my existence, which I'm still working on.
That's tough. That's just being an artist. I
think
a lot of us struggle with that.
So I've been at Cartoon Network for about 4 years, and within that, though, I finally this summer got some 11-minute freelance from Titmouse on an unannounced project that I'm very, very excited to eventually be announced.
Nice.
You know,
eventually.
The struggle. So that was really great. Well, I guess I should go back to say, you know, during the pandemic, the start of the pandemic, not being able to go anywhere, I kind of a few things happened. I started writing a lot more. Some of it was like personal, like fan fiction, and some of it was scripts. And then Ben and I started working together, my husband Ben, working together to make the Baker's Dozen shorts. And that wound up being like such an amazing thing. Like the Bakers were a script I had written as a sample, and we decided like, hey, like maybe a way to get my writing out there would be to like work on a short and have something kind of attached to it. And we did that, and that was a wonderful experience. We found this amazing composer, Mark Sparling.
Yes.
We got some help from some, like my friend, Cheyenne Curtis had already designed the characters. Kind of actually, Ben had surprised me like a couple of years ago and had them designed as like a birthday present for me.
Oh, that's really
That's
sweet.
so sweet.
Yeah.
I love that.
He had been like, who would you love to see draw these characters? And I'm like, I love Cheyenne. And then he like went and did it, and I was like, oh my God. And and they have it, like, it's kind of crazy because, you know, I would figure that I would probably be very I don't know, like precious about like, oh, what are they going to look like? But she got them so perfect that I was like, all right, that's great. It's perfect.
She's super talented.
So the characters had already been designed. My friend Matt Doring helped us pick some colors. I was very determined to color it, which Ben kept being like, it could just be a board. And I'm like, no, I think I need to color it. And he's like, okay. And we like, fine. And like, I'm sorry, I'm difficult. And there I go, apologizing again. And so we did the short, and that was really great. And around that time, I started being in a writers group with like some super talented, wonderful writers. And that has been like a super game changer of just having like, all right, I need to get something done this month. And sometimes I miss a month, but you know, for the most part, it's been really wonderful to have like a group of us that like every month go and work on our own projects and share them and get feedback, and then, you know, talk about our struggles in the industry together. And I there wrote a sample that I was really, really proud of, that was about connected to my great grandma, who was a bra fitter for the Saks Fifth Avenue in Beverly Hills. I had like decided to write like a musical about bras and getting your first bra and time traveling.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and time traveling to meet her great grandma, who was the bra fitter, and that helped get this current freelance that was, you know, which was really cool to have something so scary personal in writing and hand it to people and be like, here's my heart on page, like really, really personal heart. And I got a really great response from it, and that has helped me build a lot more connections and like meet more people this year. So yeah, I feel like that kind of comes back to, and Ben and I are still working on more Baker's shorts. We really love working on them together. We've been able to hire some friends to do the drawings, do the board / animation with us. And yeah, that's been a really cool, very eye-opening experience to trying to lead other people, which I had not gotten to do before.
Yeah, you're basically like a showrunner.
Yeah,
you're like running your own like indie show.
Yeah.
That's so
independent
cool.
Producer.
Yeah,
that's how it goes. That's how it starts.
Yes.
If other people don't let you do it, don't wait for permission. Just do it yourself.
Yeah, and that's been so nice to just make something without like having to worry about like satisfying any sort of network or like.
Oh man. Yeah.
I mean, that's Yeah,
that's just never. It's never. It's always like it's a tough thing to start, but having gone through the development grind, and we all know how it goes. It's like when you come out the other end with still having not accomplished anything, it's like, why didn't I just do this myself? But it's, it's because it's hard, and like, and you can't get the scope that you probably imagine in your head, but the process should be the fun part. And it's tough when you're starting out and you have all these ideas, and going back to, you were saying about things being epic and scaling back, and it's like, you want to, that's why you want to start small. That's why you want to just do little things, because like when you go too big and you aim for the sun, it's like, it just burns you out that much harder, that much faster. So
for sure,
it's tough. I would love to ask you about like how being in talent development has like helped your writing and artistic career, and has it hurt you in some ways, if you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I really feel like I kind of honestly recently come to a nice like realization, like that talent development and writing have really being kind of mashed together. I spent a lot. Well, let me rewind that actually. Yeah, I'd really love to talk about how writing and talent development in my career have sort of merged-ish together. I always felt like for a while that I should try and keep them separate, but I've really being, in that sort of recruitment role has helped so much as a writer, because I see a lot of what happens in the chaotic process of people trying to get work. And so much of the time in writing, it can be very lonely. It can be very, like such a challenge. You work so hard on a sample, you send it out, you don't hear anything, or there's only so many shows that get greenlit every year. So you're just kind of always like waiting to see like, when's the right time to send my stuff? And there's like so much stress on like, oh, everyone secretly hates me, or like, or they hated the stuff and they're just being nice. And the thing I realized in recruiting for me, and I try to tell artists as often as I can, especially the ones that I like support super hard, is just like, you never realize how many people are advocating for you, especially if you've been around, especially if they know you. You never realize how many people are really fighting for you. You don't know all the whatever drama is going on. Sometimes most of the time it's just completely it's completely within no one's control. Like there's so many factors going on, and it kind of gives me a little bit of peace as a writer to keep going. It's like, look, like sometimes the timing is not right. Sometimes it's just wrong place, wrong time, and you gotta keep going and making new stuff and keeping people in the loop, like, hey, like, this is my newest thing, or just trying to learn to pivot and, okay, this avenue isn't working out the way I thought it would. Well, I'm going to try doing this. I'm going to try and make a short. I'm going to make a new type of sample that's different than what I've done before. I'm going to talk to these people that I haven't talked to before. Or be in a writer's group, like just trying to, I feel so much of animation is learning to pivot, and it is always a nice reminder in recruiting. Sometimes crazy lucky things happen. Like last month I saw an artist post about looking for work. Their work was a perfect match for a show that just happened to tell me they were looking for that role. I was able to recommend them, and they started the next Monday. And
that's awesome.
That one feels so good. I love it when that happens. It's like so wonderful to see people. It's wonderful to see people get work.
Because you're rooting for them too. Like you also want to help.
Yeah, you want to see people succeed. There's people I've seen that are amazing that I'm always trying to root for, and then and it doesn't always work out, and I don't always even know why. And
Sure.
and so I try to keep that perspective for myself too. The further I've gone in, like trying to like hold on to certain positives of people giving good feedback or even taking the time to read any of your stuff is just like such an honor. And just holding on to those moments and remembering like, look, like it's okay. If it's not this one, there's something better coming, and you just gotta keep going. Otherwise you might never find out.
Yeah. I think, yeah, you told me that because like I've been or was looking for work all year, but I don't want to talk about what I'm doing. But like
I'm always rooting for you, Gene.
I know. Well, so you told me like because I was bugging you about jobs at CN, and you told me exactly that it's like people are rooting for you, and it actually like it meant something. I was like, oh, that's nice. Like you just want to hear that sometimes, and so I was like, yeah, I know, and I know that like I think that a lot of people. I'm lucky to be friends with some, recruiters and people in talent development. And so it's like, I know that they are trying, and it's never, well, maybe not never, but it's most of the time it's not personal.
Right.
Like if you're not landing those gigs, like, and you've tried to be a nice person, like it's probably not you. It's probably just timing and skill sets don't always line up, and people are looking for very specific things on shows. And so like, it's like I know that all I can do is just like poke recruiters that I know every month or two or whatever. And like, if there's nothing that's lining up, that it's just timing. Like that's why you gotta just keep trying, because sometimes, a position just got filled or whatever. And so you just don't know. And I feel like every opportunity I've gotten was like, whoops, something just opened up. We're gonna need somebody next week. Are you ready to start? And I'm like, fuck. Yes. Okay, I guess. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes there's a misfire, and you shouldn't have taken it, which I've had both. And that's the other side of it too. Is it's like sometimes you take a job and it turns out you shouldn't have taken it. And the timing was bad for you, and not just for the show or whatever. And so it's just a big mess of circumstance and coincidence, and
that's really frustrating to I'm sure to hear for a lot of people and to realize. And it's why I tell, like, I am very lucky to be quite good at at my current day job, and
sure.
I think there's something really important about like when I was first coming in, just realizing like, all right, this is where my skill sets are, and I'm going to lean into that right now, even though it's not like my end all goal. And just kind of like pivoting and trying different things, and seeing what hits and what people respond to. And I've seen people like pop back and forth between do they want to do design or do they want to do boards, and you can always tell when they hit something that is really good for them, and they're happy doing it, and they're excited to be part of it. It's such a huge difference. And then sometimes the job doesn't immediately follow up. So you just gotta keep going and trying to push yourself, and trying to go easy on yourself. And I say this talking to myself as well.
Oh yeah, we got to remind ourselves of it too. I think what you said about pivoting is so important. I love pivoting. I don't know. It's like I feel like all I've done in my life is pivot, and again, it's like the highlight reel thing, and what other people's career expectations and goals might be, just because what somebody else is doing lines up with what you want to do doesn't mean that they're happy with where they are. And that's tricky, because it's like, I've had some accomplishments in my life and in my career, but I have a much higher goal, and I'm always adjusting. And the pivot doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't always come after a failure. It also comes after successes, because sometimes it's like, oh, this was good. This was good, but now I want to do something else, and you want to pursue a new goal, and but then one might not work out, and you're like, shit, okay, well, let me try it this way. So it's like, it doesn't always mean pivot after failure. It just means keep pivoting, because that's better for you as a person, as an artist, whatever. It's like you challenging yourself. And so I think that's super important. I think having an idea of a linear career path is like unreasonable. Like you should not. I had a career advisor in college tell me, like, maybe the best piece of advice I've got in my life, but it was, one of them for sure. And it was like, if you get an opportunity, even if it doesn't feel like what you want, you shouldn't automatically turn it down, because it might lead to other things. And it has been so true throughout my life. Like, it's constantly like, I'm like, this isn't what I was hoping for, but I can kind of see how to navigate and get back to where I need to be at a later stage. It's like in games, or you have to like take the weird shortcut, or not even the shortcut. Sometimes you take the long way, to get to where you need to be, but you still got there. And so it's like, just got to be open-minded and got to pivot. And I love to hear from people who, this whole show is about that. It's like talking to people who don't have that linear path, and have tried different things, and have a day job and a hustle, and it's like they're doing their creative stuff on the side, because that's kind of more common, really.
Yeah, it's definitely more common probably than most people realize.
Absolutely. We've had a ton of questions come in.
Yay!
And I would love to ask them.
Sure.
So let me see. Well, first of all, at Bruce Greenberg asked, who your
Sorry.
I guess that's somebody you know. Asked, who are your major influences outside of the industry, which is something we always ask anyway.
Yeah, that's my dad.
Oh, hi, Dad.
Yeah.
So your dad.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll listen this far in.
You better.
But
you better be listening, Bruce.
I guess my dad, my parents were very like heavily influential. Yeah. What are my influences? Like I was very heavily following like all the big animators, that I had said earlier were in all of the behind the scenes. You can go back and sometimes I think influences are kind of hit you by surprise. I've used this story as sort of an example recently, where back when I was secretary at Disney, we would be at this, we had this really cute little, like, they called it Blanketeers. I think they all still meet up there. The people that like knit and sew get together for lunch once a week. And one of the people there was like one of my super big heroes of all time, Sherry Stoner. She was working on 7D at the time, and I don't know if you know who Sherry is, but she wrote on Animaniacs and Tiny Toons, and she was the voice of Slappy the Squirrel, and she was also the acting reference for Ariel and Little Mermaid. So I was like a total geek about it, but tried to be pretty chill about it. And I don't 100% remember what she had said, but one day she like had responded in a way that when I heard her talk, I was like, man, that's a really specific phrase that I feel like I would say. And it kind of like hit me in like on the head, like, oh my gosh, she wrote so many of these characters I super idolized growing up, like Babs Bunny and Dot. I really looked up to characters like that, especially since they were kind of the main girls of their respective shows. And it was almost kind of a wild moment of like, wow, like we all got to be careful what we write, because kids really absorb all of these things to a point where something she said and wrote like, 25 years prior is something that is part of my own like dialogue. And that was kind of a wild realization I would think people like Sherry are like a huge influence. What's the question? Outside of animation, because my dad asked it.
I think so.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
dad. Outside of animation, I love Broadway shows.
Mm.
I love I guess like I feel like in strange ways different aspects of like Disneyland, even though that's sort of animation adjacent. My dad and I watched like so many movies together, and a lot of that I think is sort of like just like in my everyday speak. A lot of like Back to the Future, and we love Almost Famous,
Oh,
and
sure.
there's some we would watch like Ocean's 11 like all the time. The George Clooney one. There
Mm-hmm.
was like always like my dad would and my mom, they got divorced when I was pretty young, but I was always being taken to like concerts and um my I was like the little kid that got to sit at the bar at like um got at Largo. Like
Mm-hmm.
they too it was funny because my dad would take me to like concerts with uh so many different people, but the big one was always Sam Phillips, who did the music for Gilmore Girls and
Oh,
I think does some music for Mrs. Maisel
sure. Yeah,
now.
probably.
And she's done her own music for forever, but my dad and I would go to the concerts so much, and we were generally the only like father-daughter pair at a lot of these concerts, so we became pretty well recognized. And
Oh,
um
really?
yeah, it was really
That's
cute.
funny.
So it's like so much of that stuff just sort of like embedded its way into me.
Yeah.
That I feel like that I started reading again more, and I think that I'm trying to kind of get different types of things outside of animation into my work.
I think that's such a good thing to mention. I do feel like it's so easy to just get sucked into animation and have just
Hmm.
animation be your whole life. And it's like, no, you gotta actively try to
Yeah.
look for other things because else it becomes like the thing that talks about
Yeah,
itself. You know what
For
I'm
absolutely.
saying?
sure.
It's like, the memes where it's just like a the I don't know, it's like someone thinking about themselves, thinking about themselves, thinking about it becomes this
It's
thing.
yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
no,
You're not.
don't.
Yeah, I think I've said it before, but it's like you got to add more ingredients to the stew. You can't just keep
Yeah.
like pouring it back in the pot.
It's a
But
struggle. Like
it's a struggle.
Yeah.
I have recently tried been like should be like I need other hobbies, but I feel guilty as someone who has a day job and then has the writing stuff. Like I always feel like I should be working on the writing if I'm not doing my day job, and that's such a hard balance because you're sitting there like, oh, I should be like doing this, and instead of like, oh, you know what, like it's okay, like I can relax, I can take a break, and I can absorb other types of media and experiences that will theoretically come back in different ways, and like
Yep.
that's okay. But oh god, it's so hard.
Yeah. Yep. Hmm.
Yeah. At Jotaro6 asked, "Would you consider yourself a good artist if you can copy different styles, but you're unable to make your own?"
Yeah.
I
No,
think that's. I think so.
I feel like so much of the job, depending on which position you're in, I feel like so much of it is you're on someone else's project and
Yeah.
you need to adapt to that show. Um, so being able to have the technical skill to go from different
Yes.
styles is a huge part of it, whether you're a board artist or especially if you're
Yeah.
a designer, you definitely need to
Yeah.
adapt.
Depends on your goals too. I think
Hmm.
like if your only goal is to get a gig in the industry, then
Yeah.
like yes, you
Agree.
better learn how to draw other people's styles.
Yeah.
But if you're just interested in doing your own stuff for fun or whatever, then like whatever. And then
Yeah.
like do
Oh,
your own thing.
absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like I don't really match other people's styles super well. And that was
Yeah,
kind of
I don't
part
think
of
I do
where
either.
that was part for me where I was like, oh, I don't really want to try to adapt to other people's stuff. And to be fair, I've seen some board artists where they don't quite adapt and it works for the show that they're
Mm-hmm.
on. And
Yeah.
their stuff is fantastic. And it doesn't need to be an exact match, but there are boarding gigs where, yeah, you need to draw very close to the model because that's, the setup of their pipeline they for overseas.
Yeah. Oh God, there's so many questions and they're all
I
interesting.
know. Sorry, I talk too much.
No, you're fine. I'm just.
Oh, that was great. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you mind answering some recruiting questions?
Yeah, go for it.
So disclaimer: this is Jessie's opinion. This does not reflect any studio. It doesn't even reflect any recruiter, any other recruiter, I guess. But I think that people would love to just kind of get some insight from somebody who's on that side of things to kind of figure out how to best breach that that wall.
Hmm.
So somebody said, how at Cash CEO, oh sorry, at Cash asked, how best can someone without an animation background prepare to work in the industry?
I think the best things you can do are one, if you found this podcast, you're probably already kind of doing some of the right things, like
Yeah.
uh, looking for those resources. There are so many resources right now. So many talented artists are sharing their knowledge via just different podcasts, via just randomly on Twitter. And granted, you can't always listen to everyone. Not every bit of advice is like super accurate, but there's so many
Yeah.
podcasts, there's so many classes, there's so many, like just so many resources out there. I'd say that is a huge first step. Um, and kind of like listening to people and looking at their work and thinking about what type of jobs that you're really interested in and look up I always say like look up your favorite shows, look at what the credits are on
Mm-hmm.
those shows, especially more recent shows within the last,
Mm-hmm.
5 years, I would say. Take a look at those artists and look up and see if they have portfolios. And now, to be fair, not everyone has a public portfolio, but keep doing that type of research, looking at what they are posting. Sometimes some of them have their own, blogs or Instagrams of just like fan art, and then on the side they have their professional
Right.
portfolio. Uh, Look at what they're posting, look at how they present themselves. Everyone does it a little bit differently, uh, but you'll just start seeing certain patterns of how people present, storyboards versus design versus uh, any other job there. You'll kind of start seeing there's a lot of different types of jobs out there, stuff you might not even realize are jobs. Um,
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of different stuff. I
there's so
didn't think I would
much.
get into background design, and that's how that was my first gig. I like you never know.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of forget, like, wow, there's someone that exists to do these like different roles, and uh, there's so like a lot of the studios, especially this last year, have been putting out like webinars and informative posts, and if you're looking at anything kind of older than like 5 to 10 years, some stuff might be a little outdated. A lot of stuff changes,
Yep.
but I think it's all a pretty good window, more so than ever before, into what these jobs, what working in animation is like.
Yeah. Related to that,
Mhm.
at second to last, Noel asked, "Hi Jesse, I'm sure you see a lot of websites as a recruiter. So what are some ways to make your website recruiter friendly? Also, what are some things to avoid when making your portfolio website?"
Um, I think just being very clear, and if I go to your website, I'm not generally spending like a ton of time unless I really kind of get like, oh, this is really interesting and dig into it. But you very quickly have to go onto this website and have a clear idea of like what this person wants to do, and how to contact them. And there's so many different ways to set it up, but if you, I say like try to have different tabs of like, say you're going for different, you're not entirely sure exactly what job you want yet. Maybe you're going back and forth between some things, having different tabs focusing on, you know, those parts of your portfolio, really curating it to not just like random drawings you've done, but like these are my best pieces of work that really show what I can do. And it's just making it very easy, very clear, and make it very easy for me to figure out how to email you. I like having the emails up there. And yeah, I think that's so much of it. It doesn't have to be a specific type of website platform. I've seen people use like just a blog spot with their work, as long as it's curated. And then if you have you know, your own personal fun drawings on your Instagram, that's totally cool. Like totally love seeing that stuff. That I feel like there's a little bit of separation of like, here's the presentable portfolio that shows exactly what I want to do, and here's my fun page of stuff that I just like enjoying posting.
Yeah. At Molly Monster asked, what are the best approaches to staying in touch with a recruiter, both when you're job hunting and when you're employed?
It probably depends on the recruiter.
Yeah.
I try to on my LinkedIn have it very clear like how I want people to contact me, and a lot of people ignore it. So definitely just like try to see or ask. You can always ask them like, is there a appropriate way for me to contact you? Sometimes we're able to go to events, but that's not been that's been a little bit difficult because of the pandemic. But
Sure.
yeah, I'd say like, you know, when you're looking for work, reach out to the recruiters, you know, every few months or so. I wouldn't make it like a weekly thing because generally there aren't really any major updates, but on like that like intensive a basis. But I'd say it's okay to reach out every few months unless something really changes. Like, hey, and you can use things like, hey, I did a whole new piece for my portfolio, like a whole new, like if not just one drawing, but like, oh, I have a whole new project I want to share with you. That's a good reason to reach out to a recruiter. Or I just finished this freelance job, or I just finished this work and I'm available. That's a great reason to reach out. Everything. Did I answer that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was great.
Okay.
Yeah.
At Cadet Katie asked, how are you balancing your time on your side projects? What takes priority?
I don't know how I'm doing that.
Just doing your best.
Yeah, just doing my best and trying to take some breaks. And, you know, I have a few projects I go back and forth between when one is just a real struggle and I'm not getting where I want to be with it. Sometimes I recently try to like switch stuff around where I'm like, oh, maybe this is going to be working in a different format, and just completely try to do something different. As with time, I still try to get good sleep and not try to like harm myself trying to get the stuff done. Yeah. And sometimes it just means the stuff takes a lot longer than even I would like. And, you know, and asking for help when I'm really stuck on something. And I feel like this is actually going into the what the
Yeah.
creative block is. Oops.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we haven't really talked about it.
Yeah, but I think with balancing as far as like time stuff is just like knowing when to take breaks and go easy on yourself and make a schedule for yourself as well. I think that's really helpful, whether it's planning with a friend. I had a friend, we were both like preparing, I think, for applying to like the Nick writing program. And this year I hadn't actually applied because I ended up getting my freelance. So I was kind of like focusing on that. But in the beginning, I helped my friend by saying, all right, like let's plan out like our deadlines for like, all right, let's plan on the premise in a week. Let's plan on the outline in like 2 weeks. And, kind of almost emulating like a real schedule, maybe a little bit longer if you're having a day job and being reasonable on yourself. And it worked really well, where I was able to finish a project with that, and she was able to finish her projects and apply to the program. And I think that is a huge help, is just like having deadlines, having friends that you help commit yourselves to it, and just trying to go easy on yourself when it gets a little too much.
Sure. At Abigail Abbey asked, hello, Jessie. What are your dream projects as a writer?
I have so many like little projects that I've just been running through, and I love to do more Baker's Dozen. I love to I have like this like theme park project I've been noodling at for years, and I have like a few others that I'm, currently working on. But like other than that, and other than I just really, my dream is to keep working with all these friends that I super admire and want to make stuff with. That's always like the most exciting thing ever. But other than that, like there's so many. I know not everyone's crazy about like reboots and stuff, but there's so much stuff that I would like be like I would drop
Yeah.
everything. And I'd love to
Yeah.
be on. I love Marvel stuff right now. I would love to be on something related with that. I love like girl superheroes. There's like so many old Disney and Nickelodeon shows that I would just love to like. I hope they make a Jimmy Neutron like somehow reboot. I thought about recently how much I love Pepper Ann from the 90s and The Weekenders. There's like some like I think there's something about like kids going and be like having like big fantasy blah. I don't know, I like a lot of those worlds, and damn, there's so many.
There is a lot.
Yeah.
But that's yeah. I mean, everyone. I think there's like we're in an age of reboots and nostalgia, and like everyone has their little short list of like, oh man, give me a crack at this.
I know. Man, if they ever, if I would love anything Animal Crossing if it ever came here.
Oh my, yeah.
Do
you know about there's like a Animal Crossing anime movie? Do you know about that?
I've watched it, and
okay.
Ben found it, and it's very cute. But like the copy of it we had, like half of it was not subtitled, and it's only in Japanese. But you kind of get the feeling of it. You're like, all right, I understand.
My favorite part. The reason why I know about it is because there was a clip going around of KK Slider who's like, now I'm gonna play a song for you. And he's like, he has this really low, like, sexy voice. He's like, now it's time for me to play a song. And then it's like,
oh my gosh.
And they just like kept the video game music, and it's like, oh, that's so funny. It's
so
it's very
good.
charming.
Yes, I love the part where like they have the spoiler for the end of a 20-year-old movie,
Spoiler
but
alert.
they have like an alien shows up, and you're like, what is this gonna be? And it ends up being Gulliver. It just cracks me up the whole time. Like, oh,
Gulliver.
Yeah. So yeah, there's so many fun things that would be a delight to be part of, and yeah.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more question, and I thought this one is interesting. From @LotionDrinker, what a name. Hey, Jessie, I was wondering if your art style is reflected anywhere else in your life. Like maybe it's similar to your home decor or the clothes you wear, or is your art a completely different identity to your day-to-day life?
I do think that like some of it sort of comes back into like the clothing I wear. Although I feel like the pandemic sort of adapted my clothes
Yeah.
clothing style a bit.
Sweatpants chic.
Yeah, I keep it. I try to, you can't see me right now, but I try to kind of keep it together and keep wearing like cute lipstick and stuff. And it like made my house very, very cute and nerdy, and messy, which is also a little bit of me and my drawings in general.
Yeah.
So I think a little
Yeah,
bit.
I don't think I've ever seen that question. It's an interesting one because I think that like I mean even looking around my apartment, like everything's very neat and a lot of bold
You have a
shapes,
very clean
a lot of-
style
and that's
too.
it. Yeah,
So,
and I
yeah.
just it's there's something about it that does kind of tie into everything else you do. And I know what V's place looks like, and it's very like organic feeling and
Oh,
a lot of plants, and I don't know. It's I think we create the spaces, the little cozy spaces that we want to like live in.
yeah.
So the last thing I just want to ask is like, what are your goals for the future, for your career and life in general?
Ah. Um, yeah, I mean, I really want to move over into the writing side, but I do have like a like ideal where it would be really cool if I could still do some aspects of recruiting, but in a, like almost the freelance sort of way, almost kind of flipping things. Because
Kind of
there,
like consulting maybe also.
yeah, there's so much of I really like being able to help people and give feedback and and kind of like so much of animation is all about casting, and there's this kind of a real fun aspect of it. So I do like being able to do a lot of that stuff, but I really just want to finally kind of jump into the creative side full time. And I love to be able to keep doing more with bakers. I have so many like general uh, big, I have so many big plans for it, and we're slowly crawling through trying to make some more shorts and kind of see where that takes us. And yeah, there's so many like little baby projects that I keep nurturing, and I'd like to try and like, you know, go and write bigger things, like try to write a feature or try to write a novel. So I'm kind of like just trying to expand and learn and make more stuff. I like making more stuff.
Yeah,
So
doing
much
stuff is
fun.
fun.
It is.
Doing stuff is good. Is there anything you want to plug while you're on here? You plug your Twitter, plug whatever you want.
Yeah, well, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram and even TikTok under my name, which is Jessie Juwono. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing, no secret names going on there. And you can the links on my page should link to the Baker's Dozen shorts, which I'm very proud of. But you can also follow
Yeah.
Baker's Twitter, which has all the updates, and that's, I think, Baker's Cousins. I think that you should check that.
Nice. Thanks so much for coming on the show. That was a great episode.
Yeah.
Yay! Oh, cool.
That's the end of this creative block. Thanks to Jessie for being our guest and sharing her story.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to your listeners. Follow us on Twitter. It's at Creative Block, creative without the vowel, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask your guests. Huge thanks to my sister Clemens for editing the podcast.
If you love our show, then support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews as well as bonus episodes. Click the link in the description of this episode. I've been your host, Gene.
And I was V, keeping creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.